DIZ UNS a certified Ork Boyz classic, and every single Ork fan already knows why. Every faction in Warhammer 40,000 takes itself dead serious. The Imperium has a god emperor on a golden throne, 10,000 years of sacred doctrine, and a million-man army that marches to its death singing hymns. The Chaos Gods have millennia of corrupted ambition. The Eldar have the grief of a civilization that burned itself alive. And then there are the Orks, who just want to get stuck in, make a loud noise, and have a brilliant time doing it. The community looked at all of this and figured something out that most creators missed entirely, that the faction treating the whole war as a laugh might be the most honest one in the setting. Not a joke. The mirror. This is the case for why Orks have the coolest lore in all of fiction. And the community built that case themselves, one comment section at a time, while some creators were still getting the spelling wrong. It's Orks with a K. It has always been Orks with a K. Before a single shot of dakka gets fired, we have to go back, way back. Because the Orks didn't start as a mob of green lunatics arguing about paint. They started as something far older and far more dangerous. And understanding what they were makes what they became either the greatest cosmic joke in science fiction or the most quietly devastating lore decision Games Workshop ever made. During the War in Heaven, the oldest event in the 40,000 timeline, predating the Imperium by millions of years, the Old Ones engineered races as weapons. The Eldar came from this program, so did others, and so did the Krorks, built specifically to fight the Necrons and their Catan star god masters. Hyper-intelligent apex warriors, colossal. The research puts them at over 12 meters in height, bigger than the vehicles Orks ride now. These weren't a mob, they were a scalpel designed to cut through the most mechanically advanced killing force in the galaxy. And they worked. Then the Necrons went dormant. The enemy the Krorks were built to destroy simply stopped showing up. Without that existential purpose, the engineered perfection degraded. Evolution without direction. The hyper-intelligent apex warriors became the Orks, still the most prolific, most resilient, most biologically aggressive race in the galaxy, still carrying fragments of Old Ones engineering in their very cells, but now spending that inherited genius on arguments about whether red makes things go faster. Which, by the way, it does. We'll come back to that. The point is that every time someone laughs at an Ork for being thick, they're laughing at a species that used to be the galaxy's most sophisticated biological weapon and can still make a space marine look nervous on a bad day. Source 6 in the academic record specifically notes that space marines, the Imperium's finest, were engineered to be a match for a standard Ork. Not a war boss, a standard Ork. The comedy is real. The underneath, it's ancient and a little grim. Now, the British hooligan thing. The community has recognized this structural parallel for decades, and the 226 combined engagement across 4 comment corrections that rejected a competing origin theory tells you exactly how strongly they feel about it. The observable evidence is right there in every codex. Ork dialect is written in a phonetic approximation of working-class London Cockney. Dropped H's, modified vowels, wa, da, I, the whole architecture of it. Academic work specifically examining Ork language as a designed dialect system, including a paper from the University of Valladolid on lexical innovation in 40,000 translations, treats the Ork dialect as a deliberately constructed phonetic register. That construction looks like one thing in particular. The clans map the same way. Goths in black, evil sons in red, bad moons in yellow, blood axes in their militaristic arrangement of looted colors and camouflage. Each clan has colors, iconography, and a cultural identity so fierce that clans fight each other in the gaps between fighting everyone else. That's not a game mechanic. That's a sociology. It maps structurally to football firm culture. The specific colors you wear signal tribal belonging, invite confrontation with opposing colors, and define who you are in the mob hierarchy long before anyone asks your name. Rick Priestley built Warhammer 40,000 from first principles in 1987. and his documented method pulls from real-world historical and cultural aesthetics. The Germanic Empire for Warhammer Fantasy is one recognized example of this approach across his documented interviews. Whether the hooligan parallel was conscious design intent or emergent structural coincidence, no direct quote from Priestley or Andy Chambers on the record confirms it either way. What is confirmed is that the structure lines up, the community recognized it independently, and Priestley built systems loose enough that this kind of discovery is exactly what he intended. He said as much in February 2024 on the Niche to Meet You podcast, that he built 40,000's background almost like a playpen or a sandpit, a space where things could grow that he didn't plan. The hooligans might be in there. The evidence for it's structural and phonetic and sociological, and it's consistent with everything Priestley is known to do. But the community found it. That's the story. Now the satirical mirror. And this is where the Orks stop being funny for about 30 seconds and start being something sharper. Ork leadership is decided one way. The biggest, meanest Ork wins the fight and becomes the war boss. No ideology, no divine mandate, no hereditary claim. You hit the hardest and the longest, and everyone follows you until someone hits harder. The whole thing is blunt and obvious and completely transparent about what it says. The Emperor of Mankind established the Imperium through the Unification Wars, straight military conquest of Terra, then launched the Great Crusade to bring the galaxy under human dominion through force. Academic Source 12, examining power structures in 40,000, flags explicitly that in the Imperium, status and power are inseparable from demonstration of dominance. The difference between an Ork war boss and the God Emperor is 10,000 years of theology and a very expensive golden chair. One of them is being honest about how power actually works. The Lehman Russ battle tank, the Chimera, the Basilisk, the Hydra, the Devil Dog, the Salamander, the Testudo, the Imperial Guard's vehicle roster reads like someone was given an unlimited weapons budget and told the crew would just have to manage. Every single one of those designs subordinates armor, crew survivability, and mechanical efficiency to the question of how many guns can fit on this thing and how large can we make them. The Orks call this dakka. The Imperium calls it doctrine. The outcome, a vehicle that is essentially a weapons platform with an apology attached, is identical in both cases. And then there is the Wa field, which is where the mirror gets uncomfortably precise. The Wa field is a collective psychic phenomenon generated by concentrations of Orks in states of combat readiness or active fighting. It isn't individual will, it requires numbers and it requires intensity. But when those conditions are met, it does something that shouldn't be possible. It makes things work that demonstrably shouldn't work. Equipment that has no functional right to operate, operates, because enough Orks believe it will. This is the mechanical explanation for the suppressor. Orks have a weapon modification Orks call the muffled shooter, a muffled attachment that functions as a suppressor. Any human engineer would tell you a suppressor reduces sound signature. The Orks, having no formal understanding of acoustics, arrived at the opposite conclusion. A suppressor makes the gun louder. That is what they believe. And the Wa field, built from millions of years of Old One's psychic engineering, responds to collective Ork belief the way physics responds to gravity. The suppressor makes the gun louder. Two separate comment threads hit a combined 296 engagement on this single piece of lore. Not because it's silly, because it's airtight. The logic of it, inside its own system, is completely consistent. And then you look one faction to the left, and the Sisters of Battle, the Adeptus Sororitas, perform acts of faith. Literal miracles. Powered by sincere religious belief in the Emperor. The bolter fires when it should have jammed. The wounded sister stands when she should have died. The miracle is real because the faith is real, and the faith is real because enough people share it. Same mechanic, different vocabulary. One of them sounds like theology, the other sounds like a bit. The mech boys, Ork engineers, carry their technical knowledge in their biology. They don't learn how to build engines and weapons. They are born knowing it, the engineering capability encoded at a cellular level, inherited down from the Krork lineage. A mech boy who has never seen a vehicle will, given the parts, build one. He can't tell you why he knows what he knows. He just does. The Adeptus Mechanicus can't tell you either. They've wrapped their operational technology in so many layers of ritual, prayer, sacred oils, and liturgical maintenance procedures that the actual engineering principles underneath have been largely lost. They anoint machine spirits. They chant binary hymns before ignition. They hoard technical knowledge and treat its possession as a mark of divine favor rather than an accumulation of practical understanding. The machines work. The mech boy can't explain why his works. The Mechanicus can't explain why theirs works. They are functionally identical to each other, separated only by 30,000 years of accumulated ceremony. One of them at least knows the knowledge is in his DNA. The Gretchen, Grots, occupy the bottom of Ork society with no ambiguity about it. Smaller, weaker, they serve as menial laborers, cannon fodder, domestic workers, and the first volunteers for anything dangerous and low priority. They have no rights worth the name, and they operate under continuous threat of casual violence. An Ork who has a grot has someone to hit when things go wrong. This isn't euphemized in the lore. It's presented as the nature of Ork society, and the grots endure it because they have no structural means of not enduring it. The lower hive citizens of the Imperium's hive worlds are indentured workers performing brutal production shifts for minimal compensation in hereditary labor contracts they were born into and will die inside. Academic work on economic justice in 40,000 specifically examines how internal labor structures in the Imperium are naturalized, presented as social order, duty to the Emperor, the necessity of civilization, while external enemies like Orks are framed as chaotic and savage. The grot gets hit. The hive worker is told the Emperor loves them. The material conditions are comparable. Now, the Storm Boys. Storm Boys are Orks who believe in military discipline, drilled formations, regulated combat procedures, the kind of regimented approach that most Orks find baffling and slightly suspect. The lexicanum entry on them is precise. Storm Boys are Orks that fancy discipline and, equipped with rocket packs, fulfill the role of jump infantry. They are the organized ones, the methodical ones. The Orks, other Orks, raise an eyebrow at for being too serious. They equip themselves with rocket packs, jetpacks, to serve as jump infantry. Faulty, highly volatile, genuinely dangerous explosive rockets strapped to the back. The most disciplined, most organized Orks in the setting have made this choice deliberately, with full knowledge of the risk, because it's tactically effective and they take their military service seriously. Space Marine assault squads also strap jump packs to their backs and hurl themselves at the enemy from altitude. The Space Marine does this in the name of the Emperor and calls it heroism. The Storm Boy does this because he fancies discipline and wants a proper fight. 57 engagement on comments flagging this exact irony. The invisible Orks are last because the invisible Orks are the point. Purple Orks are invisible. This is an Ork article of faith, and the argument for it's structurally perfect. Have you seen a purple Ork, you git? You haven't seen a purple Ork. The evidence is complete. Therefore, purple Orks are invisible. Under WA field mechanics, with sufficient collective belief from sufficient numbers of Orks, there is a legitimate in-universe case that this is operationally true in some contested sense. The field responds to belief the way physics responds to pressure. 121 engagement on comments about this, not because it's a gag, because the epistemology of it, inside the 40,000 system, is actually coherent. The Sisters of Battle believe the Emperor protects. The Emperor protects because enough people believe the Emperor protects. The miracles are documented. The belief is the mechanism. The purple Ork is invisible because no one has ever seen one. Have you seen a purple Ork, you git? Here is the deep lore marker the original video missed, flagged by a commenter with 49 engagement. Exact words. Mech boys can only build gargants/mega gargants only when the WA they are part of has reached a certain level. Not individual will, not technical capability. The collective psychic momentum of the WA field has to be large enough, intense enough, before the engineering knowledge crystallizes into something capable of producing a gargant. Ork civilization literally scales with collective belief. The bigger the mob believes in the WA, the bigger the WA can build. It's, in a very concrete mechanical sense, a civilization powered by faith. The Imperium runs on faith. Billions believe in the Emperor. The Astronomicon, the psychic lighthouse that makes interstellar travel possible, burns off the psychic energy of countless human minds. Adepts perpetually sacrifice to keep it lit, powered ultimately by the Emperor's own raw psychic might. The Imperium is a civilization powered by faith. Remove the belief, the whole structure collapses. They know this, which is why heresy is a capital offense. The Orks call it a WA and have a tremendous time. Rick Priestley built the sandbox in February 2024's telling, almost like a playpen or a sandpit, but the construction of that phrase suggests he'd been thinking this way from the beginning. Rogue Trader in 1987 gave players a setting deliberately loose enough to expand, interpret, and fill with their own meaning. The supplement that followed in 1988, Here We Go, Orks in Warhammer 40,000, gave the Orks their first detailed cultural architecture, the clans, the dialect, the mob structure, and left the framework open. What grew in that openness wasn't planned. The satirical mirror that maps every Ork behavior to an Imperium behavior wasn't in a design document. No quote from Priestley or Chambers lays it out. It grew in comment sections. It was assembled by fans tracking the lore across decades of codexes and novels and forum arguments and community corrections, including, famously, the correction that generated 1,582 interactions when a creator spelled it ORCS, and the community descended in full force. Orks, with a K, always with a K. The community knows the lore better than some of the people making content about it, and they have been building the cathedral quietly for years, while some creators were still fumbling the spelling. The thesis the community reverse-engineered is this: the Imperium kills billions in the name of a god emperor who has been technically dead or inert for 10,000 years. In vehicles designed as weapons platforms, with crew survival as a secondary concern, sustained by faith that has a documented in-universe mechanism for literally reshaping reality, built on a labor underclass with no realistic means of advancement, led by men who got their positions through violence and dressed that fact in divine mandate. The Orks kill billions for fun, in vehicles designed to be loud and go fast, sustained by belief that has a documented in-universe mechanism for literally reshaping reality, built on a grot underclass with no rights worth mentioning, led by whoever hits the hardest and is honest enough to say so. One of these civilizations is the joke faction. A comment with 69 engagement put it plainly: 40,000 Orks have the coolest lore of any Ork species in popular media. That commenter was right, and here is why they were right. The Orks are a species of devolved demigods, engineered by the oldest power in the galaxy to fight an enemy so ancient the Imperium doesn't know it exists, who now strap rockets to their backs for fun, believe purple makes you invisible, and in doing so accidentally hold up a mirror to a civilization that considers itself the pinnacle of human achievement. The joke isn't that the Orks are stupid. The joke is that everything the Orks do openly, the violence as culture, the belief as mechanism, the hierarchy by strength, the weapons forward engineering, the Imperium does with a straight face and calls it civilization. Priestley built the sandbox. The fans looked into it long enough to see their own reflection. They built the cathedral inside it, argument by argument, correction by correction, comment by comment, and they spelled it right the whole time. Subscribe, there's more where this came from.